Well, hello, everybody. It's 3 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar that we're having today on getting to ROI, the shift to results-oriented Google Analytics. Go ahead and get started. I think we've got a few more people probably join in as we go. Kick off. Oh, do a little click here. A little bit about who I am. So my name is Tom McCracken. Back in 1999, I founded a company called Level 10 Interactive. And really, the company wasn't founded just to build websites. That was sort of, I like building websites. I love technology. I'm a developer. But really, my passion is about using the web to actually create an impact. And so in the beginning, really, the plan was simple. We want to learn everything we can about how to make more effective websites. And so over time, we started needing tools to do that. And we adopted open source to help us innovate faster. And while we've built a lot of projects on open source platforms, we've also contributed a lot back to the space, particularly plugins, modules, themes for Drupal and WordPress. Also, to help us innovate better over time, we adopted Agile as a project management methodology. And then as over the years, as I learned more about how to build effective websites, we started doing a lot more speaking and training. And so from that, I got to meet a lot more people. We started to organize groups, go to a lot of conferences and meetups. And as I got to know more and more people in the web industry, it seemed that there was something that was missing. At a lot of, I have a friend of mine that says, he spent all these years kind of crying over our milk about, why aren't there bigger projects or more interesting projects sometimes in this space? And so I felt that there's really something kind of missing that I wanted to do something about. And so a few years back, we created a cause called Results-Oriented Web. And really, what I kind of feel is one of the big problems in the web industry is that too many websites are just kind of a pile of code and content. And they might be very pretty websites with some slick features, but ultimately they don't really make that much difference to a lot of their organizations. And so there's a handful of websites that have done a good job of being results oriented. And these tend to have very large budgets and do some really interesting type of work. And so we wanted to kind of start focusing on working with the industry on how can we move from sort of these websites that are just kind of, how can we build a lot of features that don't necessarily cost a whole lot of money, to how can we build websites that actually create an impact where we can do larger, more interesting type things. And so it was interesting. I was out actually having dinner with a few other marketers around Dallas. And one of the guys, as always happens, we started talking about the industry. And one of the guys actually threw out and said, I've come to realize that my job is all about producing a chart with a line that goes up. It doesn't matter what is that chart or what I'm measuring, but what matters most is that the line's going up. And of course, this is kind of like comically Dilbert-esque. But interestingly enough, I think at the same time, it offers sort of some profound insight into the challenges that websites have. Now, first of all, the thing I thought was kind of interesting is that I have to applaud my friends' clients that they actually realize they need a graph. For many years, we've had a lot of people contact us, and we'd ask them, what are the goals of your website? And only maybe 1 in 5 would actually have thought through what their goals are. And a few that did have good goals or maybe were good at thinking on their feet, they'd say things like, oh, we want our website to pop, or we need to make changes on our website without calling our developer and waiting 2 weeks, or we need this feature, or our content's horrible and we need to change this. But a lot of times they didn't have things necessarily that were measurable. These things would tend to be a lot more just like pain points that they wanted solved, but they weren't really things that would necessarily impact the business. And so the first roadblock that I found for a lot of organizations is they don't have particularly well-defined goals. And if they do have goals, they don't tend to be SMART goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. And so one of the things that's kind of interesting is many years ago, I had an uncle that he ran a bank for many years. He went to Harvard undergrad and Harvard Business School. And when I got into business, he gave me one piece of advice from his years of experience. And that was, what you measures goes up. At first I thought, wow, that's a trite piece of, whatever. But actually it's really kind of interesting. I've learned sort of the magic of this piece of wisdom, in that a lot of times just by measuring things, that helps us improve these things. And so, I think some of the reasons that we see these lines, as you start to measure things, we start to see a positive effect, is that first of all, it helps a team work towards a common goal. More importantly, if it's measurable, then there's not left to ambiguity of something like, I want the website to pop, or we want to be thought leaders or something like that, which different people can interpret in different ways. The other thing I think it really helps with creating good measures is it enables more effective decisions because it helps you identify and uncover what really works best and what's a waste. And then the final thing is it helps fuel organizational learning and innovation. And so it's one of these things where it's not just a group of people that are attending conferences, reading lots of blog posts about best practices. They actually are learning together and they're seeing data that's helping to challenge maybe some of the preconceptions that they had or the mental models they had about how things work on the web and what's really best. And so I think, that in this day and age where everyone's kind of markets have gotten so efficient that really one of the big areas where companies can differentiate themselves is their ability to learn faster than the competition. And while it's great to go to seminars and to learn from qualitative experience from people, there's really nothing like having true data to back up that learning to know what really is important and what's not. So, you don't have people thinking that the sun goes around the earth. You actually have data proving that really the world is much different than we thought it was. So getting back to our line going up. And so, I think it's great that anyone who's got some sort of measurement, they've implemented a certain amount of analytics, awesome. They have that measurement. The fact that they're measuring it probably means that it's headed in the right way, or at least they're doing things to make it move that way. But then the real challenge comes, and it's sort of the Dilbert-esque part of the statement about a line going up, is the question becomes, what are we measuring? We figure out this is another major challenge people have in getting to an ROI-driven website. And so there's this interesting data trap that people fall into. And it's sort of like the classic story where someone sees his friend over on one side of the street looking for his keys. And after a little while, the observer says, well, where'd you lose your keys? And he said, well, I did over on the other side of the street. And of course, the observer's a little surprised and says, well, why are you looking here? It's like, well, because the light is better. And of course, the problem is he's never going to find what he's looking for. He'll never find the keys so he can actually get to where he wants to go. And we find that this happens with a lot of organizations. They spend their time measuring things that are easy to measure, but not necessarily things that are meaningful. And what's interesting about that is not only can that cause a problem, but it also will often mean missed opportunities will not be uncovered because we're measuring the wrong things. And sometimes we'll even see a diminished amount of the effects from the types of things that we want returns from. And so the big thing we want to measure is things that create an impact, things that produce profitability and keep people employed, create budgets to do bigger projects. And so we need to be measuring those kinds of things. So that's what brings us back to ROI, the thing that so many people are now talking about after years of just kind of producing websites that look good with slick features. And so, as a good starting point for how to define an ROI is just the simple equation of its returns divided by investment. Now, when you're looking at, a lot of times we want to measure ROI on a project. It might be a web redesign. It might be a marketing campaign, might be something like that. So we need to tweak this equation a little bit, and we need to figure out what are the incremental returns from the particular project we're doing and divide it by the investment for that project. And so, it's pretty straightforward in business school that if you spend $100,000 in ad buys and it generates $200,000 in sales, you have an ROI of 2, or if you prefer 200% if you want to turn it into a percentage. And so if you've got an e-commerce site, great, you can measure this. You can start tracking purchases on your website and track the ad clicks that people are using to get to your website to figure out what campaign they came from, and you're done. But then, of course, there's the problem of, well, what if it actually takes multiple visits, which is more likely the case when someone makes a purchase. Maybe someone clicks on an ad and they don't purchase then, but they sign up for a newsletter, or they favorite a product, or they do something like that. And then later they get an email that drives them back to the website and they make the purchase. And so it's awesome that you've got this integrated marketing channels that are working, but now how do we attribute the value of that purchase? How should it be split up? And so, let's say someone does come to the website and they don't purchase. Well, that ad click created brand awareness. It captured a lead. We're an e-commerce site. We want to generate revenue, but those things are worth something also. And so the tricky part becomes when we start getting into these more complex websites, how do we measure the value of all the things that are going on? So for example, if you don't have an e-commerce site, maybe you're a business that wants to generate sales leads. And so people who request demos or ask for submit a sales inquiry, or you're a nonprofit and you're looking for donations or volunteers, people to sign up for events and things like that, or you're a publishing site and you want subscribers. And so, maybe you're a startup and what you're really looking for is users. And so there's all these different things that different types of websites are looking for. And really what we find is that in today's web, there's a lot of websites that have multiple purposes. And so they're trying to do various different things like this. So there's not just one type of conversion that we're looking for or one type of valuable thing to measure. So this is when a lot of people, they just kind of say, all right, that's a lot to calculate. Even big companies, that's a lot to calculate. We're just going to install Google Analytics and we're just going to call it a day. That'll give us, that means that we're now data driven. And so there's a quote years ago and something I feel is really kind of at the heart of something that is sort of a secret to getting to a results-oriented website. And that's, there's no perfect way to do it. The value is in the exercise of trying to do it, coming up with reasonable assumptions, and over time getting better at figuring out what drives value on your website. And so, getting back to the whole searching for the keys on the wrong side of the street. And so what we want to help people do is not just install Google Analytics, but to actually take Google Analytics and make it results oriented. And there's a lot of power under the hood of Google Analytics, but a standard install just doesn't get you there. So and in a bit, I'm going to show you kind of like a lot of the tricks to pull with Google Analytics to make it more results oriented, but it kind of starts to help to talk about kind of the model a lot of organizations kind of mimic a website for a results oriented website. So the most important thing, of course, that we want to measure results is conversion. And conversion is just a fancy web word of saying when people do something that the organization values. And of course, for an e-commerce site, it could be, an actual sale. For other things, it's going to be something that's going to be less directly revenue generated. And, of course, in order to have people convert, we've got to actually get them to our website to start. And the traditional advertising way of doing things, people say, oh, let's just go buy a bunch of media and let's push people to our website. But a lot of people, they don't like interrupt and repeat marketing. And so now we've got to create content to attract people and draw them to our website. And so another thing we've got to look at is, well, how well is our content attracting? And then even if we've got good content that's attracting and we're measuring we've got a lot of conversion points and we're able to track all those conversions, we still have got to do some intermediate steps to get people from just being an anonymous visitor on our website that don't know a whole lot about us necessarily to get them to do some conversion thing. And one of the most effective ways is we need to build trust by engaging our audience. And so these are all things we want to measure. Not only do we want to measure are things converting, we understand not just attracting, which of course Google Analytics does a pretty good job with out of the box. Are we attracting the right people? And also importantly, are the things that they are seeing on our website, is that getting them engaged and moving them towards a conversion or getting them to do some other sort of valuable things like sharing our content, championing our brand? And so one of the other kind of tricky things or opportunity and challenge points when we're measuring online ROI is that we have sort of these macro conversions, and a lot of people can identify what those macro conversions should be. If you're an e-commerce site, it's a purchase. If we're a B2B website, it might be generating a sales lead. There's different types of macro conversions for different types of websites. But what we also want to measure is we want to measure when people are taking steps towards those macro conversions, when people are becoming more engaged. And so, you know, for all the different types of websites, there's different types of things we might want to measure along those lines. And again, what we find is that a lot of times websites don't just fit into one category. They're actually doing multiple things. They might be doing lead gen. They're using content marketing to do it. So they're doing publishing. Obviously, if it's a business, they're doing branding, or a nonprofit. They may even have an info and support website for their customers. And so there's all these different sites that are all these functions are sort of blended together. So, like I said, Google Analytics is a very powerful system, but a standard install doesn't actually provide a whole lot of insight into truly valuable things that are going on our website, the things that produce ROI. And so we'll take a look at, kind of walk you through some of the things that we like to do to help correct for that, to actually measure more important things. And what I'm going to be showing you is actually a lot of times, you know, what we do is over the years, we've worked with clients, we kind of implement custom things, and then eventually say, well, wouldn't it be great to enable other people to do a lot of these same things? And so we take those ideas and we turn them into plugins and modules for other types of content management systems to make these things a lot easier. And so while these are things that you can do just with regular Google Analytics, you know, and some development chops, we've automated a lot of this stuff, and we're going to kind of walk through some of the automated pieces on a WordPress site to show you some of the things that are possible with Google Analytics. So I'm on a demo website, and I've got open my real-time. I've got my real-time analytics, and I'm just going to open up a anonymous visitor over here on this side. I'm logged in as an admin for the site, but I can go over as anonymous visitor. And I click over to our website. And so what Google Analytics primarily tracks right out of the box are page hits. Every time someone hits a page, that page hit comes through. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from page hits. We can learn where people are coming from. So I put in my referral that this was term 1. We can learn where someone is. I'm in Dallas right now, and so you know this information comes up. We can determine what pages they're hitting. But like I said before, ultimately this is sort of vanity metrics. It's information that's interesting, but it doesn't really get us to, are people buying? Are we generating leads? Are we doing those kinds of things? To do that, we need to work with some of Google Analytics extended features, such as conversions and events. So conversions is kind of the main place that Google Analytics sets up for people to measure important things going on the website. And it's a little bit different for every kind of website, but a very typical thing might be anytime someone submits a contact form. So I'm just going to submit a form. And over in Google Analytics, the fact that form was submitted comes through. And we can do this for all kinds of different forms. Could be you know, people subscribing to newsletters, could be people applying for jobs, you know, all kinds of different things. One of the things that's interesting is that while Google Analytics has this power, it's got to be custom set up on every website, because every website's a little bit different. And what we find is less than 15% of people actually set this up. And then even of those people that set it up, a lot of them do it in ways that's not particularly accurate. So the most typical way is whenever someone submits a form, they hit a landing page, and after the form is submitted, and then that landing page is put into Google Analytics, and it knows, oh, I'm going to trigger whenever someone hits that landing page. The problem is if that page is just left open in a browser and someone goes back to it later, or if it's, which is a particular problem on mobile, because it could just be left open and then it'll refresh the next time someone opens that mobile browser, or if someone shares that link, maybe there's an ebook download or something like that, you'll actually get a goal come through Google Analytics when a form wasn't really submitted. And so, you know, one of the things that we want to do is make it easier for people to track things like form submissions, and also make sure that they're being tracked properly, that only when a form is actually submitted do we get a goal. And to do that, you've got to hook into a content management system, or write some fairly sophisticated JavaScript to kind of prevent the false positives. And while it's great to track sort of macro conversions, there's a lot of other smaller conversions that we want to track. So for example, a lot of times if you're doing content marketing properly, you're going to get a lot of champions on your website. They're going to be sharing your brand and helping promote your brand. So if someone's on your blog, for example, might very well be that they want to use their sharing buttons to promote information. And so we want to make sure that we can track things like this. And we do that actually with Google Analytics events. And so this just ends up being custom JavaScript that monitors when certain things are being interacted with the website and then pushes that data through Google Analytics. One of the things that, and a lot of times when people set this up, you can set it up using goals and conversions. There's a drawback to doing that though, in that a goal, you only get 20 in the free version of Google Analytics. And if you really start measuring all these macro conversions, you can quickly burn through 20 goals pretty easily for, say, different ebooks, different job applications, some of those kinds of things. And so if you were to set up a single goal for each one of your social sharing buttons, Google Analytics would only track it once. They only track a particular goal for each session. Or if you set up a different goal for each one of these, now you've burned 5 of them. Then you go down and you want to track when people actually click over to your social profiles. You might burn another 5. There go half of your goals. So what we like to do is to set up events, and we just kind of have a little nomenclature where we put a little explanation point at the end, and we can push now through practically an unlimited number of valued events, sort of as these micro goals. So some of the other things that we may want to understand on a website is, we've got page hits, but out of the box, Google Analytics doesn't tell you anything about if people are looking at videos. And so one of the big things we might want to do is track whenever people are watching videos and which videos are being played. So we can see how effective a single video is across multiple pages it might be on, or if it's embedded in certain ways, is certain types of embedding more effective to get it watched than others. We also want to understand how deep do people watch into it. So we can do things like record a video scroll event, which might have a percentage that someone has watched into the website. Another really big thing that's problematic with Google Analytics is that when someone, the typical scenario is you create a good attraction piece of content, and it might very well be that you promote it in social, maybe even pay to have it promoted, elevated in social, and someone comes to the blog post, and maybe it's just there's a disconnect between what they read, what they thought it was about, and they click off of it after a second or two once they kind of look at it. And this is a hard bounce. So Google Analytics will tell you, hey, you just said a bounce. Interestingly enough, they don't tell you how much time someone spent on that page. Google Analytics will only give you time spent on a page if there's another page hit, or if there's another event that comes through. Default Google Analytics would only say, hey, there's a page hit on this one thing. Someone clicked away in 2 seconds. We never saw another page hit, so no time was logged. Alternatively, let's say you've got a great ad, and it's exactly what people are looking for. They read through your information. They now know more about your brand, but maybe they're not ready yet to do anything else. Well, this is a very different situation, particularly for publishers that need to know, are people actually reading our content? Not just are they hitting our pages? And so one of the things that we like to do is that we can set up where we monitor the time a page is visible, and we monitor how deep people scroll into the content. And then we can trigger what we call a page consumed event. And so let's say someone's on a page for a minute, and they scroll down through through 90% of the content. We can be reasonably sure that they actually read that content. And so now by doing that, Google no longer logs this as a bounce. And it now is logging the fact that, hey, the person that was only there for 2 seconds, yeah, they only spent 2 seconds on the website, because when they leave the page, we're sending how much time, the true time they spent on the page, and also how deep they scrolled. So now we've got that second event that tells us the true time they spent on the page. So we know the difference between those people that only spent 2 seconds on the page and the people that maybe spent a minute and actually read the content. So the first part to creating results-oriented analytics is figuring out and measuring all these valued interactions from your macro conversions down to your micro conversions. The tricky part, of course, then is once you've done that, you now have got a whole lot of things you're measuring on your website. And so what we want to do is make that simpler to digest and to bring it back to sort of a single number that scores what's producing the most value on the website, and to kind of be able to create that chart. A single line instead of saying, hey, there's 1,000 different things we're trying to measure and different charts for different things. So the way we like to approach this is just to associate a utility score or a value score to all of these different things. And so it might very well be that big things like people submitting your contact form might be worth 100 points, let's say. Someone shares your content in social, that might be worth 10 points. Someone just going to another page on the website, that might be worth a small amount. I mean, it does tell you a little bit about how they're engaged on the website. And so from that, and there's two ways I like to kind of look at this data. One way is we can just kind of look at this as sort of points, a little bit like, how you rate a fantasy player in football. The big goals down here are when they score a touchdown. These are going to be a little bit more like when they get 10 yards on a carry or they catch a pass or something like that. And so, we're trying to just score all these things to understand sort of what their contribution is to the game. How effective are they being? And so that's one way to look at this information. Another way for people who are ready to get to that next level of sophistication is to actually estimate dollar values. And basically kind of go and say, it doesn't necessarily mean that if someone submits our contact form that we generate $100, but we can go, how many people who submit our contact form become a customer? And what's the lifetime value of that customer? What's the likelihood that someone that submits that becomes a customer? And maybe we can back into coming up with some sort of reasonable estimate. And a lot of times people can get carried away in coming up with a very accurate number, but we don't always come up with a good educated guess to start. And then over time, iterate on what we think provides the most value. And so once we have started scoring all this stuff, we now can use this analysis to help figure out how much value is the website producing. And then most importantly, when we make changes to the website, did that value go up or down? Also, what pieces of the website are producing the most value? I'm on a demo site, so I'll go ahead and kind of show some data from some real websites. And so, one of the things that we can do is, and so, we built plugins for Drupal and WordPress to be able to pull all of this data and bring it all together. Years ago, we used to do spreadsheets to bring this information together. And if you're really good at Data Studio or some of the newer tools that Google Analytics has, you can start to pull some of this kind of data together into a single view. But there's some reasons we'd like to do it in the CMS, but Data Studio is kind of a neat, slick way of doing it also. And so what we want to do is we want to create these unified views of, here we can look at a scorecard of the website, sort of like a box score of a game, and we can understand all the different things that are producing value on the website. We can understand all what web content on the website is producing most value, what marketing channels, those kinds of things. One of the biggest areas that's awesome is not just seeing what the entire website's producing, but one of the big things we want to do is we want to understand what types of efforts, what characteristics are producing the most results so that we can do more of those kinds of things. And so what we can do is attribute scores back to pieces of content that are actually producing that value. We can do the exact same thing with marketing channels or marketing copy or keywords or any of these things. So then we can say which, say, social networks are actually not just providing the most traffic, which ones actually get people engaged, are actually producing more conversions and these kinds of things. What content not just gets hit the most, but what actually attracts information. In fact, this is actually a screen grab from a little ways back on our website, and we see that we had 2 blog posts actually got a ton of traffic, but actually they didn't produce a whole lot of engagement, where this third blog post produced a lot more engagement. So these are the types of posts that maybe we want to look at producing. The other thing that we can do a lot of times is, and one of the reasons like we love to put this information in the website is because Google Analytics, unfortunately, is one of the kind of the greatest tools that gets quickly installed and quickly forgotten. You know, it sits over in this other thing, and you know, some companies have got an analyst or a manager that looks at this stuff. A lot of times they look at it for a little while and they stop looking at it. But everyone's living in the website, the content producers, the designers, the developers, the marketers. And so we want to bring this data over to where they live. And so, for example, if people are writing a piece of content, there's just simply a tab that they can open up and say, I want to see the scorecard for this content. I want to understand the impact, the results that my piece of content is creating. And then they can start to look at different pieces of content to start to understand trends of what might make for a better, more engaging, higher converting piece of content. The other thing that's really fun to do, like bringing this information into a content management system, is content management systems give us metadata. And so they give us data like who's the author of a piece of content, what are the taxonomy terms, the subject, how long is a piece of article, we can count up the words. And what's awesome is with taxonomies, we can basically kind of put metadata around almost anything we want. What tone is the article? What ways did we promote it? And then what we can do is we can just total up. We can say, hey, we've got 5 blog posts that we promoted in LinkedIn and 10 blog posts we promoted in Facebook. And we can flag that, push that information over to Google Analytics, and then we can pull back. Here's the performance of the 5 that we promoted in LinkedIn. Here's the 5 we promoted in Facebook. Or here are the people that this person wrote 10 articles. This person wrote 20 articles, and here's the value each one's producing. So we can start to understand which author do we think is producing more value. And so we really kind of just take anything that's a taxonomy and turn it into segmentation data to maybe understand sort of page attributes that are more effective in generating results. And so the goal in all of this is that is to help people move from this kind of standard way we see of building a website where, you know, the experts come in and they've got their ideas, and the stakeholders have got, you know, their opinions about the best way to do things. We go and we build a website, launch it, and then no one really knows what it's doing. And maybe we do some Google Analytics on it, so we see some traffic numbers, but we don't really understand, we don't have the data around what's meaningful. And so, you know, we want to do is make sure that people can iteratively build better websites, use that ROI information to figure out what provides the most impact, to help them do more important things, to help their team grow smarter, not just by, you know, reading about what are some good things to do, but actually having the data to support that information. And what's interesting is we've had this system over in Drupal since 2013. We've gotten the opportunity to collect a lot of unique data with some big enterprises, and there are some best things that people that we and other people tout as best practices that are not necessarily true, depending on the situation. And more recently, we've brought this over into WordPress. So it's pretty exciting to kind of open it up to a whole nother group of people that are, you know, doing other types of things with their website. And so, you know, this, like I said, this is where we think the web is headed, and we are trying to help people kind of make that shift from sort of that those static websites or those non-data driven websites to something that they actually have the data to go and improve and you know, command bigger budgets and get into more interesting work. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Philippa, do we have any questions?
Yeah, so one could ask, can you compare the data that you collect from one month to the other, or is it just all collectively just for 1 month and that's how you determine your ROI?
Okay. Actually, what's interesting is that was actually kind of one of our most popular requests. And so in the WordPress version, you can. We haven't gotten that ported over to the Drupal version. So it used to be that, you know, the main report is going to show you the last 30 days. Now you can change that time frame and go and look at things like, okay, how did I do last month versus how am I doing this month? And so yes, that is a feature in the WordPress version. At some point down here the road, we'll probably get that backported back into the Drupal version.
Okay, another one is you mentioned you can flag content or a CTA. How do you know what's flagging correctly or what the right data is for that?
I'm sorry, let me turn my volume a little. I didn't quite hear you. Could you ask that again?
Yeah, so you mentioned you can flag content or a CTA. How do you know the flagging is using the correct data, or how do you figure out if it's capturing right? If it's a different CTA or what have you.
Sure. Yeah. So interestingly enough, so you can actually look at traditionally what we've done is a lot of times we just look at the real-time Google Analytics information. Unfortunately, you don't get the full picture of what's going on here. So like, for example, there's more information that's being pushed than just what's in this report. And then it becomes a little bit tricky sometimes to figure out what we're tracking. And so as a tool to help people kind of build out more custom tracking, you can actually go and create completely custom events inside of your WordPress site or inside your Drupal site. So like, let's say, for example, all these ones that have just the edit button, those are all programmatic out of the box. They just start tracking when you install this thing. I set up this CTA click. This is a custom one. And basically what I do is just kind of go in here and I give it a name. And then I say, hey, look for any links on the page that have a class track CTA. When someone clicks it, trigger that event. To test that that's actually working, what we want to do is I'll run over to some demo pages. So to track that that's actually working, we have this little event explorer. And I can enable it. And what it's going to show me is it's going to show me everything that's being tracked on this website. And so, for example, I just set up this event to track. I just set this up custom. It's something custom on a website. And so now I can click it. And now it's going to tell me all the information that's pushing over into Google Analytics. Some of this stuff gets into some advanced tracking features for down the road. The main thing is, first of all, did it track? And am I tracking the right, kind of the right name? And is the right object being tracked? Is the right value being tracked? Some of those kinds of things. So just a little tool to, help non-developers kind of build, like being able to track lots of things on their website, and doing it without having to necessarily call their developers to make those changes.
Great. So one of our two final questions, one is the plugin for Drupal or is it for WordPress, and what is it called and where can you get it?
So it's called Intelligence. And actually it's available for, it was built originally for Drupal, and we had a lot of people request to bring it over to WordPress. So we've spent the last several months bringing it over to WordPress, launched it a couple months ago. And so it's available. And I will admit the Drupal one needs a little bit of love. Project Intel is the Drupal version, and the WordPress version is wordpress.org/plugin/intelligence, all spelled out. So yeah, you can just download it from here, or inside of your WordPress site, you can just type in where you add your apps. You can just go in there in your admin and type in Intelligence, and it'll pop up in your plugin search box.
Okay, and this is one last final question. Is it free, or how much is it paid, and how do we get started?
Okay, so there's a free version, and actually everything I showed you guys is in the free version. The pro version adds basically a data package that enables visitor tracking, so that basically when someone submits a form, we can kind of look, or anyone on the website, we can actually track their entire path through the website. We can score visitors. We can build up a profile of who people are. Now, that's only publicly available information, but so if someone's on the page, they're navigating around, they're anonymous. But once they submit a form, they log in the website, something like that, now they become known, and we can start to build a profile about who they are. That's what the paid pro version does. They're the free version. You can get started just by downloading it. It connects in with an API that helps manage your Google Analytics accounts and does some things like that. So you download it, and you actually there's a wizard that'll walk you through the setup process. But what you do is you create if you already have Google Analytics on your website, you create a secondary Google Analytics property, so that sort of all this enhanced data is running through that, and you can keep your other one running the way it is. You want to register for an API key for the intelligence API. And then you're off and going. Starts tracking a lot of the things. Start tracking right out of the box. Depending on how your site's set up, there might be some custom things that you want to set up to track differently, and you have some tools to do that.
One last one just came in, and okay, so you said you can track a lot of the Google Analytics and social media. Is there an integration with Discuss, and can we measure the engagement that way?
Okay, so interestingly enough, this goes back to there is a Drupal. We haven't got that ported over to the WordPress side yet. Yeah, so actually, it's actually kind of an interesting little integration. So one of the things, of course, we want as a key engagement thing we want to measure is going to be comments. And so while we measure both Drupal and WordPress's built-in commenting engine, we love Discuss. And so in Drupal, we've actually got the Discuss thing where when someone submits, it actually captures what their submit ID is, triggers the event, sends it over to Google Analytics that happened. But then we can also, depending on how someone's Discuss privacy is set up, if their profile is public, we actually can pull back who they are and make that sort of like a part of their profile. And so you can start to kind of build up profiles of people who are engaging on your website. And so we'll probably in the next couple months, we'll bring that over into WordPress. And along those lines, one of the biggest things that we're trying to do is figure out what are the most important things that people want to be measuring. We have our own websites. We work with some big teams. They're doing a lot of content marketing automation, things like that. But there's a lot of different types of websites that are built in both of these open source CMSs. And so we're looking for feedback on what kinds of things do people want to measure, do they think are valuable? And then, we either can give you sort of instructions on how to write some scripts to do it. And some of the bigger, more important ones, we're going to go ahead and build sort of add-on scripts that will extend tracking into other systems or enable you to track other things like polls and voting and commenting and so forth.
No more questions on my end. So, Tom, if you have anything else to add, that's the end of our questions.
That's the main thing. So I just love to invite people, just go try out, just go install it, try it out. Let us know what you think. Let us know if any suggestions you have for the future of this thing. And like I said, our goal is to really empower people to build websites differently. They're driven by data, driven by data driven and results oriented. And we've had fun building communities around a lot of the other types of stuff that we've built, SEO tools and all that kind of stuff in the past. But this is an area that we love to start seeing feedback. And if you want to get involved in the project, let us know. If you've got something you want to measure and you're a coder, we'd love to kind of point you in the right direction on how to build some of these extended add-ons also. I'd just like to thank everyone for stopping in and kind of learning more about ROI-driven websites. Thanks.